I am a hereditary peer, as you know, Andrew, and have never, ever either tried or could plausibly play this game. It does mean I get loads of grief. People say I have no right to have an opinion on anything because I went to a private school and was born with extreme privilege. So I kind of half understand why they play it, but it is totally implausible. And it is sad. The Baroness Armstrong is right that we're in this identity politics, and it really undermines the democratic process because it doesn't allow people to make authentic emotional connections with the voters, which is what people are crying out for.
Time now for my panel of peers with the Tories' James Bethell and Labour's Hilary Armstrong. Now, we spent the past 50 minutes or so talking about the Labour manifesto, so I want to take just a slightly different tack as we come to the end of the show, and I want to ask you this. Why is Keir Starmer so keen to say he's the son of a toolmaker and Rishi Sunak from a shopkeeper family? I mean, nobody buys that they're just ordinary people. Hilary Armstrong?
Andrew, the problem is you're nearly as old as me. I suspect not quite as old as me. And we didn't grow up with what they now call identity politics. And the problem is today, everybody wants to know about who you are rather than what you believe and what you're going to do. And the two current leaders are party to that as well. And they therefore feel they've got to say far more about who they are than folk in my day, when I was starting out on this journey, ever had to do.
It's a very interesting answer. James Bethell, it does lead to some ludicrous claims. So Mr. Sunak says he was deprived of Sky Television when he was a kid. I mean, how could he ever survive without that? I mean, that is Victorian levels of squalor he had to live through there. Mr. Starmer couldn't stop himself getting in on the act by saying that he was deprived of Sky when he was a kid too, which is hardly surprising since he was 27 on the year that I launched Sky Television. I mean, it's just so inauthentic, is it not, James Bethell?
Well, I was born with a massive spoon, silver spoon in my mouth, and I am a hereditary peer, as you know, Andrew, and have never, ever either tried or could plausibly play this game. It does mean I get loads of grief. People say I have no right to have an opinion on anything because I went to a private school and was born with extreme privilege. So I kind of half understand why they play it. But it is totally implausible, and it is sad. The Baroness Armstrong is right that we're in this identity politics, and it really undermines the democratic process because it doesn't allow people to make authentic emotional connections with the voters, which is what people are crying out for.
Hilary, despite this sort of Monty Python act of, I was poor, no, I was poorer, no, I was even poorer than you kind of thing, done with a Yorkshire accent, I think, in Monty Python, the Sky News event last night, which was a fascinating event on Sky News, at times it was pretty bruising for both Mr. Starmer and Mr. Sunak, wasn't it?
I gather so, yes. I actually was out doing other things around the election last night, so I didn't see it. But yes, and of course, that's because the public are fed up.
Yes.
They do not understand why we're in the position we're in, particularly, I might say, in places like Grimsby, where they were told all sorts of things and heavily supported Brexit. And actually, their lives have got worse, not better. And so that's all of our faults that they see that. And I understand that. And that means for anybody trying to say, I'm going to make life better for you, folk are going to be fairly heavy with you.
No, it's very interesting that it was interesting, James Bethell, Mr. Sunak, when he blamed the doctors, partially blamed the doctors' strike for not getting the waiting list down, the audience kind of booed him. They just didn't buy it. They didn't want to hear that for him. And Mr. Starmer then struggled with his previous enthusiastic support for Jeremy Corbyn. The audience didn't like that either. And it's interesting for politics. It's easy for them to dissemble in front of someone like me. When you do it in front of a live audience, it's far tougher. People rumble you, don't they?
Well, they're crying out for some authenticity and some honesty. And I think it's a shame that Rishi didn't say that he's really struggled with the NHS and he's frustrated that he hasn't hit his targets and that he wished he could have done more to reform. And I wish Starmer had said that he felt heartbroken to be in Starmer's shadow cabinet and felt compromised from having been there, and is pleased that he's been able to redress that mistake. Why can't they be on the level? There are politicians who are able to do that. These two really struggle with it. It's in their character, and they're both playing the boring bank manager, and it's not working for them, either of them, I don't think.
No, though it doesn't seem to be derailing Mr. Starmer's likelihood that he will be the one in number 10 after July the 4th. But Hilary, I suppose, does it not speak volumes for where we are in this campaign now? The attention is already moving on to what Labour will do in power, but also what will the Tories do to themselves in opposition. So can't we just have the election now and then get on with it?
Oh, please. That's the first thing you've said, Andrew, that I absolutely, totally agree with.
Oh, surely not the first thing.
I really wish the election was today. I think we're all a bit fed up with it already, and we really want it out of the way. But yes, there is a problem for Labour because everybody now expects they'll win. And 3 weeks out, that's not a really good position to be in. You need to be seen to be having a bit of a battle. And I have to say, I'm always the eternal pessimist around elections. But I am concerned that people think, oh, that's all done and dusted. And we now have to talk in great detail about, as you were before we came onto your discussion, about taxes and how the Labour government will pay for things in a way that actually Sunak and the Tories have not been challenged on. But it is. I mean, I never thought that at the end of my political career, I would be going to schools where they're having to feed children, where they're having to give them a shower or a bath because they're coming in smelly, because they don't have hot water at home, where they're coming in without uniforms, so they're getting lots of second-hand uniforms. And I've seen this in the Northeast in the last few weeks. Okay. So who thought we would be facing that now?
All right,
we're going to be facing a lot of challenges.
Indeed.
And I don't take anything for granted.